Recording is on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DXgov governance discussion, 25th of August, 2021. Quite a few items on the agenda. I predict that most of this call will revolve around Arbitrum and swappers. So let's perhaps first do a quick recap of live proposals. So looking at mainnet, we have currently 6 proposals boosted or pending boost. There is the Kermit LNLHB Inc. worker proposal still live. Then there is actually a new swapper release updating the content hash. We then have the swapper signal proposal, which has actually also not been voted on yet, but I guess we'll get to swapper and Arbitrum further down the line in this call. Then we also have a member balancer from Sky, I believe, just reclaiming his gen that he kindly provided to the XDAI base. Then we also have the DXL Arbitrum anointment proposal, which I believe has also not been voted on yet. But again, I guess we'll touch on that later on in the call. And ultimately, the last proposal on mainnet is to transfer another 100 Ether to XDAI to complete the prolongation of the DXD buyback proposal. So that, of course, was extended by 1 million. And at current prices, 100 Ether should kind of close that out. Moving to XDAI, we have a couple of worker proposals live there, namely from Lucy Foss, Melanie, Adam, Ross, Caucus, Medusha. And we also have, I believe this is Nissa's first contributor proposal. So Nissa will be heading kind of the marketing efforts, and her first proposal is live. So make sure to go take a look at that and vote in favor of it if you are in favor of that. Then also another proposal we actually have live on the XDAI base is something Melanie has been working on for a while, which is actually the DX referral proposal. So kind of incentivizing people to bring people to DXDAO if you know someone awesome who is looking for a job. And Melanie, maybe you wanted to briefly give an overview of that?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Well, let me just say that I think DXgov is long overdue for a referral program, and it's finally here. The initial draft proposal was in the forum for about the past 2 weeks and received positive feedback, I believe, from the community, and it is now live on XDAI, like Dave was saying. DX referral is a reward program specifically for those who refer any new contributors to DXDAO. I'll link the forum post and on-chain proposal now, or maybe Dave, you can. The proposal outlines the specifications around this program. I'll just take a little bit of time to run through them right now. So essentially, we want to recognize those who refer any new contributors to DXDAO by giving them a reward allocated in either stablecoin or ETH. However, there are some guidelines around this. You are only eligible for the DX reward if the referred contributor stays as a contributor and making impactful contributions to DXDAO for at least 6.5 months. In addition, there are some specifics around the contributions, such as you have to complete a trial period, you have to join the necessary squad and community calls, make sure you're completing your tasks on time, as well as communicating well within the DXDAO ecosystem. All of these requirements are outlined in the proposal in the forum. And as far as the reward amount goes, the amount you'll be rewarded will be based on the level of the contributor you refer at the time of the referred contributor's onboarding. So for example, if you refer someone who's a level 2, you'll be rewarded $2,000 in stablecoin or ETH at the end of the 6.5 months. And the reward will be prorated for part-time contributors as well. So you will be responsible for contacting myself or anyone else in the contributor UX for any referral you have. Details around what you'll need to send over are in the proposal. In addition, there are details of how you'll claim your reward after the 6.5 months with an on-chain proposal in the post as well. So let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, you can go vote on it on XDAI now. Thanks.
One quick question I have actually is, does this also have an effect retroactively, or is the idea that starting from now on forwards?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did go back and forth a lot about whether it would be retroactive. I think it should be going from starting now moving forward. If anybody has like any additional suggestions around that, I mean, I think that it's almost September, and making it retroactive to January of this year, it seems a little unreasonable. But any other thoughts around this? I mean, you could completely object to that.
Yeah, no, I think that makes complete sense.
All right, great.
Awesome. Well, moving on, before we actually touch on the Arbitrum and Swapper stuff, which I foresee will take over most of the duration of this call, I'll just briefly touch on DX Retreat, which is, of course, an weekly topic, but there have been some updates. So accommodation has actually already been booked from DXDAO for all contributors attending. So just to give a quick recap, we'll have a DX retreat from the 10th to the 15th of October. Accommodation has been booked for this. This is a venue roughly half an hour outside of Lisbon, a bit more country-style retreat, I would perhaps say, but still close to a relatively large city for Portuguese standards, so still within accessibility of everything. And then we've actually also closed some places in Lisbon from the 15th until the 24th, and one Airbnb was actually also booked until the 25th for people perhaps partaking in the hackathon ETH Lisbon, as that finishes on the 24th. So for any contributors who are attending, feel free to already arrange your travels. Everything is sorted out on the ground already in terms of accommodation. I believe now we'll also start looking into other stuff as we have the accommodation sorted. And ultimately, because Lisbon didn't really have a vast choice of large properties with, which could host 20 people, we actually went ahead and booked 4 smaller Airbnbs. So, but the allocation of that, we can figure that out at DX Retreat, etc. And also still planning around the events. August is a very slow month in Portugal, so it's actually been quite difficult to hear back from venues where we could eventually host events or a party, but that's still an ongoing effort, and we're also looking at some of the sponsorship offers right now. LizCon was released yesterday, I believe. The sponsorship packages are a bit higher than expected, for me at least, but there are also other sponsorship opportunities such as Daoist or ETH Lisbon, where we've also had a request in. So we'll also circle back on those in the coming days and see how we want to contribute to that. And then moving on to the 2 hot topics of this week, we have DXDAO Arbitrum launch as well as Swapper token launch, or at least these 2 proposals are live on mainnet. None of them have been voted on yet, but I believe there's been a lot of effort behind both of them. And perhaps we can briefly touch on the Swapper token first, Zet. Perhaps you can give some motivating words for people to go ahead and vote in favor of Swapper token release. Floor is yours.
Oh, totally unprepared speeches. Let's go. I mean, obviously, we've been preparing this for a while. We're preparing the product, our first product token. This is us moving from being a DAO with products to a DAO with products and product tokens and guilds. And I think this makes sense for at least Swapper. And read through the DAO talk post, the discussions we had, the changes we made. If it makes sense for you guys, go vote for it. And Arbitrum is launching any day now, so we actually aligned the Swapper token launch with the Arbitrum launch, and the goal is just go all in with the farming incentives, with the airdrop, trying to double, triple our community, get new workers, incentivize workers with not just being paid with the DXD and DAI, but also with Swapper token. If you believe in the team, if you believe in the product, you can get paid with the currency that actually can, can be a good thing for you. And yeah, I think that's all I can say. I'm trying to stay balanced here. I'm from Sweden, so we don't really try to make people vote on anything here. So do your thing.
Fantastic. So people on the call, make sure to make your voice heard by voting on the proposal, or people listening to this afterwards in the recording. And then I guess the big topic is upcoming Arbitrum launch. So there's been a lot of discussion surrounding that and a lot of things still happening. Perhaps John or Augusto, you can give a recap also for people perhaps listening to this afterwards of where we're currently at. There's of course the proposal live on mainnet as well for the anointment of the DXgov base, which is what it's going to be called. Perhaps you guys can give a brief update of where we're at, what's coming in the next days, and the floor is yours.
Sure. I guess I can maybe give an overview and then hand it to Augusto to talk more about DXvote and the Arbitrum base specifically. So I think you've already started talking about, but there's 3 proposals currently live in relation to the Swapper token launch, as well as the launch of Swapper on Arbitrum 1. So the first one is the Swapper signal proposal. That was made by some community member. We don't know who they are, but they presumably saw the plan on DAO Talk and deployed the Swapper token, sent most of it to the DXDAO treasury, and made a signal proposal using the text from the DAO Talk post that had been prepared from the Swapper squad, as well as others in support of that effort. So you can check out that Swapper signal proposal, vote on that. It has the Swapper token address. It's important to kind of verify that things are being done, as we expect them, since there's this sort of trust put into this person or people who did the deployment. The next kind of proposal of interest is the DXvote anointment, the Arbitrum base anointment. So that describes the configuration for DXvote, and Augusto will tell us more about that in just a second. And the third, and in some ways most exciting proposal, is the update to swapper.eth, which deploys the latest release from the Swapper squad. So again, a lot of stuff to confirm and verify there. If you check out the Arbitrum Launch Plan DAO Talk post, one of the latest comments is from Federico, who actually wrote a script which helps confirm some of the stuff that was done. It's a little bit trickier than a normal situation on mainnet, where we're used to seeing everything on Etherscan and all the beautiful detail that Etherscan provides, because Arbitrum 1 is not yet visible on Etherscan, and the Arbitrum Explorer gives a relatively limited amount of information, but it's enough to kind of see that things have been done correctly, and then leveraging Federico's script that can help with the verification process. So that's sort of the overview. Those proposals are live. If if everything looks good and the swapper.eth update proposal goes through, and that could pass as early, I think it's set to pass on Saturday if people vote for it. Then swapper.eth, if you go to it, it would be live on Arbitrum. The airdrop would be ready to go when Arbitrum actually launches. Then the next big piece for Swapper is the liquidity mining, and also potentially liquidity from DXDAO itself. So for the liquidity mining, if things were done correctly, and it's important to go verify this, the Swapper token is in place on Arbitrum 1 to be deployed for farming campaigns. However, there will need to be proposals on the Arbitrum base to kick off each of these farming campaigns. And even though DXvote has been deployed, we do need permissions to be set on the Swapper wallet scheme, or the Swapper quick wallet scheme is what we're calling it. Basically, that's the voting module on the Arbitrum base, which allows us to act quickly and with the swapper farming campaign contract, that the factory contract there. So I'll let Augusto talk more about that. There are some steps kind of underway, which will set us up to do those proposals, right? So it doesn't look like they'll be ready to go like at the moment Arbitrum launches, but within like days after, I'm hoping that if all goes well, we should be ready to kick off the campaigns. So yeah, I'll hand it off to Augusto, and then, or if people have questions, feel free to shoot too.
Hola guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Yes? Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, like John said, we submitted a proposal today to set the permissions for the DXgov addresses on Arbitrum. Mainly, the idea is to also set up a flow of funds to make it more secure, also flexible, so we are able to do everything. So the main idea is that we have 4 schemes: the registrar wallet scheme that is not going to handle any amount of funds. This is why when you see the proposal to set the permissions, you are not going to see the registrar wallet scheme. The master wallet scheme is we are executing the proposal to set the permission from the master wallet scheme because it has the right to set any permission on DXgov. We deploy the master wallet scheme with the same parameters as the registrar, but it's not as expensive as the registrar wallet, as the registrar scheme to create and execute and uptake on proposals. So the permissions, mainly what they do, they only allow a transfer of funds of Ether, DXG, Swapper, and WETH. We took in count only those 3 tokens, and well, of course, Ether, the native token on the Arbitrum network. So let's call it those assets. The assets are going to go to the Quick Wallet scheme or the Swapper wallet scheme. The Quick Wallet scheme, they're going to, it can do it can make any call, it can do any transfer, but only with the funds available on the scheme. Let's say the avatar is going to have a 1,000 Ether. Instead of risking the 1,000 Ether to be able to do anything like we have right now on the contribution reward scheme, where on mainnet you can create a proposal to basically request the entire transfer of funds on the DAO. Here we are adding a limit, so if you wanna execute a transfer of Ether, you send it first to the Quick Wallet scheme, and from there you distribute the funds. Also to the Swapper wallet scheme. So if we want to do a Swapper governance or financial action like adding liquidity or creating a farming campaign with Ether or any of these 3 assets that I mentioned before, we send the funds to the Swapper wallet scheme. But if, for example, we want to start, let's say, paying workers using Arbitrum, if we feel that we are ready for it, we can send a bit of funds to the Quick Wallet scheme, let's say, I don't know, $10,000 in Ether, and then we can do anything from that Quick Wallet scheme. We can distribute that funds any way we like. Because the only funds that are going to be at risk that are fully transferable are the ones that are going to be in this scheme wallet. So we are going to be able to distribute the funds in a safer way, so we can execute quicker and faster actions on the Quick Wallet scheme because we have less funds at risk. So we can be more flexible. We can act quickly. If we see that the Quick Wallet is running out of funds, okay, we send more funds from the avatar to the Quick Wallet, and the same will be for the Swapper wallet scheme. Besides that, we can do anything we want. It's only one proposal away. Like you're going to see later, where we have to resubmit the permission setting proposal because one permission, actually like a few permissions, I copy pasted the wrong value. So in few hours we are going to have the final proposal to set 24 permissions in one proposal, and this proposal is going to configure the DAO just the way I described, which is very flexible, and we will be able to do anything we want with just the schemes that we have. This is very different to what we are using now on mainnet, on XDAI, where if we want to do something new, we have to deploy a multi-call scheme. Like there is a lot of bureaucracy behind that, and technical bureaucracy if we want to call it that. I mean, it's a way more complex. Where here we just if we want to do something new from a scheme, send funds or interact with the new contract, first you need to create the proposal to set the permissions to allow that functions to be called, and then you call them. I don't know if it was too complex to ask me any questions you want.
Something to note too, as some people are aware, like Arbitrum currently is not open access for all, even though it's been launched, right? They have a whitelist basically controlling all of the addresses that can access Arbitrum at the current time. So the proposal that Augusto talked about, that's coming from his like whitelisted address, which is the only, I think, whitelisted address with reputation right now on DXvote on Arbitrum. So King Augusto on Arbitrum for the time being until it opens up and the rest of the citizens can go over the bridge. But what that also means is that it can't like possibly pass anything by absolute majority until it's fully launched. So relying on the kind of like the boosting period and that to get things done initially here. And then once it is open, though, there may be proposals that we would want to have absolute majority on to move things quicker. That's some things that can make things move a lot quicker. So I would say be ready. The DAO may call upon its voters to move things quickly along with some of these swapper campaigns. And we're hoping not to have to rely on that too often because the swapper module, the swapper quick wallet, has the ability to pass boosted proposals within a day and a half. And the reason that we think that's still safe is because there is a minimum threshold of rep that needs to vote in order for that to pass. So it's being set to, I think, 7.5%. So there is still that protection, but 1 day and a half to pass things from the swapper quick wallet should allow us to move pretty nimbly when dealing with the farming campaigns and such on Arbitrum.
Yes. Also, I want to add on the DXvote we have a governance view where we are showing the distribution of reputation. So, like Sean said, it would be awesome if we can execute the proposal with majority vote. We have the addresses there that have more reputation. So maybe let's try to coordinate internally on the organization level. Who is which ones are the persons if they want to identify themselves right inside the organization among us later to coordinate a majority proposal execution. That would be awesome. That would be awesome, and I think we are going to need again when Arbitrum launches, they are going to open the gates, and let's see how it works. But I think, we want to still be ready, right? To use all the features of Swapper, of DXvote, as soon as they open Arbitrum, right?
And Augusto, DXvote on Arbitrum will also be the first time using DXD as the staking token in the holographic consensus. So can you talk about like what we're thinking about there and like how will that work?
Oh man, yes. Well, today the idea is that the proposal that we share with the setting these permissions, these 24 permissions, we have to uptake it with DXD. I already breached DXD. I have DXD ready to be used to staking, and we are going to be staking the first proposal on a production network, if we want to call it like that, with DXD. So yeah, I forgot about it. That's going to be a huge thing. Well, we are going to be using DXD for staking. Yeah, this is going to be the first proposal that they're going to be upstake using DXD.
I think we lost you at the end there, Augusto, but
Okay, that now it's fair.
yeah.
No, yeah, we are going to be using DXD on Arbitrum. You have to breach it. Today, we are going to upstake. I'm going to upstake the first proposal using DXD on a production network. Yeah, big thing. It's a big thing, I think. We were talking about using DXD as a staking token for a long time, and yeah, it's going to happen.
One difference right now is that the DAO doesn't automatically downstake a proposal, right? So proposals start with like a 0 stake.
No, the proposal start with a negative stake. That is called the minimum DAO bounty. We set the minimum DAO bounty too high when we made the deployment, and the side effect from that is that the minimum DAO bounty is how much the DAO is willing to pay to the person who is going to be upstaking the proposals for having holographic consensus, right? So the more you pay, the more secure it is going to be, but the more it's going to cost you. So the initial schemes that we decided to use, the initial configuration, they use a very high minimum DAO bounty, and we are going to be submitting a proposal to lower it. So the way it works is that, for example, let's say on the registrar wallet scheme, if you create a proposal right now to change scheme parameters, you have to stake at least 10 DXE to execute the proposal, right? To boost it. If that proposal passes and executes successfully, that 10 DXE that the DAO staked, later you can claim it. You will be able to claim it as soon as the avatar on Arbitrum has DXE. So, for example, let's say I create a proposal on the registered wallet scheme that actually I have to do it to change these configurations. I'm going to be staking 10 DXE. This proposal is going to change the value that we are going to be using. We are going to use 1 DXE for actually no 0.5 DXE on registrar on the registered wallet scheme in the future, and well, after the registrar, after I execute that proposal in the registrar, the minimum DAO bounty is going to change, and I will claim I can redeem later 10 DXE from the DAO because that was the minimum DAO bounty. But I'm going to be able to do it once the avatar has funds, right? Me and any voter. So right now we are not taking that in account in DXvote. We have to. I didn't add that logic yet, but we are going to be claiming these minimum DAO bounties from DXvote on mainnet and on XI soon. I need to add that. That logic.
Should we take some time to kind of go over these parameter levels? Because I think maybe that was a thought too that we could discuss here. What's an appropriate level to set these, like thresholds to? So they're set. There's like an initial set, and I can share my screen. Actually, I think Augusto is not at his computer, so I'll share my screen here so we can just see the proposal. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
So I'll just go over this real quick, and then we can dive in a little bit deeper, if that makes sense, Dave. Does that sound good?
Totally sounds good.
It might take the rest of the call, so but I think it's important. So we have 4 schemes here that were deployed: the registrar wallet scheme, master wallet scheme, and then 2 what we would call quick wallet schemes. One is the generic quick wallet scheme, and one is the swapper wallet scheme. So something to kind of know in general here, registrar wallet scheme is controlling permissions and installations of new schemes. So it's sort of like the controlling scheme for all the other schemes. The master wallet scheme allows calls to be made from the avatar. And so that is basically accessing the avatar's funds, right? So the main source of funds on this base. And the important thing that indicates that here is calls to controller, right? So if the scheme can call to the controller, it's actually accessing the avatar and doing things with the avatar funds. The quick wallet schemes don't have calls to controller enabled. So they are just allowed to spend from their own address, right? So they're sort of these isolated modules that can do things. And basically we'd have to load them up with whatever funds are needed to do the things with that specific scheme. So for instance, the swapper wallet scheme, if the deployer did it correctly, should have enough swapper token to supply the planned liquidity mining for, I think it was something like the next 3 months. And as I mentioned earlier, the goal is to have this required percentage vote to execute boosted proposals to be 7%. So that means here, time limit for pre-boosted proposals is 12 hours. So you make a proposal. If somebody upstakes enough DXD, it gets boosted in 12 hours. And then if it has enough vote in favor, it would be passed within 1 day. So 1.5 days total here for boosting. Otherwise, it's just, you have to get better than 50%, and it would pass immediately when that threshold of 50% is met. But if it passes as a boosted proposal, it just needs to have more rep voting for it than against, and a minimum of 7%, according to what's specified here. And yeah, so to go through all of these parameters, let's look at the master wallet scheme and just go through each of the parameters. Max seconds for calls to be executed after approval. So once a vote is passed, like in a state of passing or past the boosted time, then there's 1 day allowed before it expires. Essentially, you have to actually execute it within 1 day of it passing. Maximum reputation to be changed in a proposal execution. So any proposal of the master wallet scheme can issue up to 5% new reputation in the Arbitrum base, right? So that's limited. That's like a safety measure that helps a bit there. The type of controller permissions is generic calls. So this means that the master wallet scheme can interact with basically any other it can do multiple calls. It can kind of do any calls. Augusto, correct me if I'm messing anything up here. Required percentage to execute queued proposals. So this is basically what is required to immediately pass a proposal is 50%. And the way these contracts have been written, from DAOstack originally, it's hard coded. Like you can't do anything less than 50%. And so that's why one of the reasons you see 50% here, but it also, I think, is logical that you want it to be 50% or more for the DAO to be able to kind of finally pass the proposal. So once it hits 51%, it passes. It doesn't matter how long it takes to hit 51. Once it's there, it's done, right? The vote is passed. And that makes sense because it's an actual majority for the whole DAO. There's just no way you could beat that. Required percentage vote to execute boosted proposals. So right now, this is intended to be 1%. Time limit for queue proposals. This is how long it takes for a proposal to expire. So if it doesn't pass or doesn't get boosted after 14 days, it expires. Time limit for boosted proposals is once it's boosted, how long the vote goes on for. So remember, it's like a relative majority for boosted proposals. So at the end of that 5 days, if there's more for, it passes. If there's more against, it fails. And then time for pre-boosted, this is how long it takes from once the upstake reaches a certain threshold for it to go into the boosted state. The threshold limit to boost proposals. So this is where you have to do some math, right? So there's some weird math here that sets the threshold for how much upstake relative to downstake is required in order for a proposal to boost. And also related to that is this minimum downstake set for new proposals. So when you create a proposal, there's an automatic downstake set by the DAO itself. So if it's 1 DXD downstake and the threshold limit here is 1.5, the other number that you have to watch is the number of actual proposals that are currently boosted. And you have to raise this number to the number of currently boosted proposals. That tells you the ratio of upstake to downstake that is required in order to boost. So for 1.5 threshold constant, if nothing is boosted, it's 1.5 raised to the 0, which is 1, right? So no matter what the threshold constant is, if nothing is boosted, it's always going to be 1 because it's raised to the 0. So the ratio is 1, and that's the upstake to downstake. If the minimum downstake was 1 DXD, then you only need to get 1 DXD, just over 1 DXD in order to boost it. If there's, say, 4 proposals boosted, it's 1.5 raised to the 4. I don't know what that number is. If it's like, say it's like 5, if it was 5, then you would need 5 DXD, 5 to 1 ratio. So you'd need 5 DXD in order to boost that. Yep, and the minimum time for final answer to not change before execution. This is the quiet ending period. This is to protect against a scenario where voters are intentionally waiting for the last minute to make their vote in hopes that they surprise people and they don't, other people don't see it coming, and then they can move the vote in their favor. So this is meant as a protection against that happening. So if the vote switches which way it's going within 1 day of passing, it gets an extra kind of overtime of 1 day in order for other people to be able to see that and also participate in the vote. Rep stake on queued and pre-boosted proposals is the voter reputation loss. So if you vote before, this is important to remember, if you vote before a proposal boosts, a certain amount of your reputation gets staked on that proposal and can be lost if you lose, if you're on the losing side. So this is maybe a little high, 25%. So if you lose on a vote that you voted on pre-boost, you would lose 25% of your reputation on the master wallet scheme. So does anybody have questions on that? Because once we understand this, I think it's a good idea here to spend a little bit of time talking about what these numbers are. Currently, we have the ability through that registrar scheme to change them, right? So it's not like these things have to be, this is a new base, right? Things are just starting. I don't think it has to be perfect on day one, but these are things that the community should be thinking about so that we can adjust them to the appropriate levels, right? And I think this is actually a great learning experience. We have a new base, where the stakes are high in the sense that we want to compete on Arbitrum, but relatively speaking, the amount of capital is not the same as it is like on mainnet, right? So this is a good opportunity for us in a very serious environment to do some experimenting and figure out how some of this should be set. So yeah, any questions?
Adam has a question. What if the proposal is boosted, then downstaked?
So once it enters a boosted state, you can no longer stake on it, I believe. And then what happens to the staked rep? So I don't actually know if it goes to the winners or if it's just lost. I want to say
it is lost.
It's lost.
The proposal, the reputation stake is lost. It is burned. And also regarding the boosted required percentage, that is something that we added on DXgov. This is a new configuration, like a new voting parameter that we added. So for example, let's say that the boosted required percentage is 5%, and the proposal finished and it had 4% on the winning side to execute. It's going to show us pass, but it's not going to execute, right? So you are not going to lose your reputation in that case because the proposal got approved. It got a higher reputation on the winning side, but it didn't execute it.
I guess I have a question more about this, like percentage required to execute boosted proposals. I think we've seen a lot on mainnet and XDAI that participation is a lot higher in voting on XDAI, where fees are relatively affordable transaction fees, right? So maybe not directly relevant to kind of the parameters we're looking at, but do we have an idea of what fees will look like on the Arbitrum network in like speaking in dollar amount, and if these boosted vote required percentage might actually end up being a bottleneck if fees end up being high, or do we have any idea about that?
I do think fees are not going to be as low as they are on XDAI. I don't have a good sense of this. Maybe Augusto could speak to it, but I do think they could be reasonably high. It's somewhere like in between XDAI and
yes. Yes. It's going to be a bit more expensive than XI. I think it's going to be super cheap compared to mainnet, but yeah, a bit more than XI. Maybe 2-3 times of what we are paying on XI, or maybe even more.
I think it might actually
They're going to be very cheaper.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it could be as high as like a fraction of, maybe a quarter or a half or something of what's on mainnet. I'm not sure, but I think it might be. So yeah, I mean, to get back to your question, Dave, like that is something to consider, right? Like you're balancing essentially like quorum so that things can't get like snuck through essentially with low voter participation versus the ability to execute, right? Because the two evils are like something sneaks through without people seeing it with too low of voter participation on one end, and then on the other end is something important needs to get done and not enough people are around to like push it through. So if it's set too high, you run into that problem. If it's set too low, you're kind of approaching the first problem. %1 doesn't strike me as a particularly high level. 7%, which is what we were going for on the swapper wallet scheme, that is a decently high amount of rep, right? Like a lot of proposals pass on XDAI with less than that. But I think if we're going to do things really fast with the swapper one, then it makes sense to go higher. It's basically like a compromise on the security there.
One other thing I would say is the 25% rep locked seems a bit high for unboosted proposals, right? Especially considering that people who mostly do this are perhaps newer people who don't know that you actually lock up rep.
Right. And yeah, I mean, so one way to kind of avoid this, and it's to be smart about it, is to not vote on pre-boosted proposals, right? To wait till it's boosted and then vote so your rep isn't locked. But I would agree. I think 25% does feel a bit harsh.
I guess what's the reason in general to like deter people from voting on pre-boosted proposals?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer.
I can see a little bit of like, you should have to stand behind your vote or something, or kind of it's a way of like sponsoring it. But it doesn't seem super beneficial.
Right now, we are using, I think, a 4% voter reputation ratio on contribution reward. That is what we are using right now on the contribution reward scheme. 25, yeah, seems super high. Maybe we can use the same value that we are using right now on the contribution reward, or yeah, something near that. Important thing is that all these voting parameters, they can be changed at any time, and the way they are changed is by the registered wallet scheme. Every time that you want to, you can register, add, remove schemes from the registered, and also change the configuration. This is actually something that we are going to be doing, another proposal that we have to submit to change the minimum DAO bounty. So if we feel that we also want to change these values, this will be a chance to do it.
But I think it definitely makes sense to address Chris's question as well, right? I guess off the top of my head, I also don't see a scenario where, or a justification for there being any percentage locked at all, right? But perhaps there is. But...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure. Like, I think some systems punish, like they think of it as like an incentive to like punish the losing side with it. But yeah, that's not entirely clear to me, right? Like, because what's really, like, you might have contentious votes, right? But what's really so bad about being on the losing side, right? Don't you want people to engage, you know?
And you don't get any benefit for voting early. Like, I thought it would maybe make sense if you got like extra rep for voting on a pre-boosted proposal that eventually passed, because you kind of like express confidence, but there's no really incentive to do that.
Yeah, I wish we had like Elon or somebody here from Nasdaq to grill them on why this was set up this way, because yeah, I don't know. But I think that there's a few things that we should kind of discuss that might need changing. I mean, a lot of these can be changed, but I think in particular, yeah, the voting loss ratio. I think the minimum down stake for new proposals, that costs the DAO money, right? So it's important to keep that in mind. And as Augusto mentioned earlier, I think these are probably a bit high, right? Like, especially if you compare them to what is currently being done on mainnet, like it's 250 gen. That's worth, I don't know, something like $25 these days. And, you know, 0.1 DXD is like $50 these days. So even that's maybe a little high, especially for something that maybe meant to do a lot of proposals on a separate base. So I don't know, Augusto, you remember you had some ideas on changing these that we were talking about earlier this week.
Yeah, we are using mainly base ourselves on the values that we are using right now on mainnet and XDAI. We can take in account how much is that in dollars and set that values on the master wallet scheme, quick wallet scheme, something like $5 of DXC for the quick wallet scheme, maybe 10 or 20 for the master wallet, and a high value in the registered wallet scheme. That is the most important one. That is the one that we want to keep super protected. That's the point where you can actually like attack the DAO. There are multiple ways to attack the DAO. The good way, I mean, the good thing is that right now on DXgov, we protected ourselves against an attack that can be minting a lot of reputation and burning a lot of reputation. That was fixed with the max reputation change that can be set in the Bowery machine. The boosted required percentage that we are adding, making sure that we are not going to have proposals being executed with 0.0000001%, and the registrar this entry point of attacking DAO by using the registrar the scheme. This is as simple as assigning an address that can be an Ethereum account as a scheme that can do anything, and that's it. You lost control of it. So right now, that's the only way where I can see that the DAO can be attacked. The DAO was always we always have that possibility of mainnet too, and it never happened. But that's the only way so far that it remains that I cannot fix. That I cannot find a solution for that. The solution there, the way to protect ourselves is with governance. That's why we are using these very harsh voting parameters on the registrar, and then we are safe because the other scheme they cannot register any other scheme. We protect ourselves, for example, on how much, on how many, on how much ether we are going to transfer, which functions are we going to execute. Those two things we protect ourselves with the permission registry, and the reputation minting we protect ourselves from the voting machine with the maximum reputation change, and the boosted required percentage on the voting machine. So that's the scheme that should be more secure, where we can use everything, all the parameters that we have at our disposal, and we are not going to use it as much. I think we are going to have a proposal, a few proposals per year there. Sorry, I think I talked too much. Yeah, something like $50, $100 for the registered wallet scheme, $10, $20 for the master wallet, and then $5 something like that for the quick wallet scheme.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds reasonable. And again, this is like a new base, new layer 2. We can monitor how it goes, right? Like, and adjust as we learn and as we see things happening. Another thing I think is good to think about is that required percentage to execute the boosted proposal. But all of this stuff is interesting to think a little bit about, like the time limit for boosted proposals and the pre-boosting and the quiet ending period. Those are important to think about too. And for like the most sensitive schemes that can move a lot of funds and stuff, I think when you're thinking about the time to execute, and this fundamentally is like one of the reasons that like consensus just can be a little bit slow in terms of the on-chain piece of it, right? Is that you need to set a certain amount of time for people to vote. And when you think about that, I think it makes sense to think about kind of worst case scenarios, right? Like what happens like on the holidays, or like when everybody's at DX retreat, or there's some big Ethereum conference going on, or there's like an internet outage, or the Etherscan goes down or something, right? Like there's certain things that can happen regularly, or could happen kind of hopefully not regularly, that could remove, like kind of take people away from voting for periods of time. So that's why it's important to have, good buffers on the more sensitive stuff and let it take a week or more. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here, a lot to unpack. I guess we're basically at the end of the call, but I think, it's important for everybody who has rep, especially, to look at this stuff and to understand it. And it's going to be important for DXDAO to like adjust this as we go forward. So it's good. The more informed people we have about this, the better. That's basically all I have. I don't know if people have questions or whatnot.
I guess if there are no further questions, we can also wrap up the call as we're coming up on the hour. Well, seems like there's Chris. You unmuted?
No, I was going to say thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for attending.